Yeah, I think we're really fortunate to have this panel today, and we talked about, last year I went to, with the youth panel where I met the amazing Sophie, to the APEC Voices of the Future program over in Bangkok, and one of the sort of conversations was around, it's not really, they're not the voices of the future, they are the voices of right now, so I think we're really in for a treat for what we're going to hear today. So, yeah, I'm actually just going to hand straight over for introductions. So if you would like to start, Lupicina, and introduce yourself and maybe just talk a little bit about what global citizenship means to you.
Awesome. Tēnā koutou katoa no Hāmoa me Tokilaua hau. Ko Koro toku whānau, ko Lupicina toku ingoa. Talo whalawa mā lo le soifua, mā lo ni tātou ka ingoa lo ingoa Lupicina Koro. O te uluai mai nuu o Salelonga I Savai, loto lufi I upolu whaapea fo'i ma atafu I Tokelau. Kia ora everybody, how fitting that we get to celebrate global citizenship, education and just the theme itself during Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. That's quite a powerful notion in itself. Very, very grateful and privileged to be part of this kōrero and be part of this panel alongside absolute manawahine in their own spaces and in the spaces that they occupy. I connect to this kaupapa from the Prime Minister's Scholarship for Latin America. So back in 2019, when I was in my third year of university, I received a scholarship and was able to study in Mexico for 5 months, and I cross-credited my engineering papers. I studied a Bachelor of Engineering and Commerce conjoint at the University of Auckland, so sort of the ops across the road. And then I started as a graduate transport engineer with Oricon, and that's my full-time mahi. But I am so honoured to still remain connected to this kaupapa because I do have a passion for education, and I'm still sort of figuring out how to, ensure that my day-to-day mahi aligns with the passions and the kaupapa that I feel deeply about. So really grateful to be here. Global citizenship, I think we probably all have our own definitions. You all have your own twist on it. But in my mind, global starts local. It's all about understanding your place in the world, not to promote Otago or anything like that, but just to say, it's really all about having some awareness of where you sit, of your position in this world, what your potential impact is, and caring for something that's bigger than yourself. And for me, global citizenship didn't start because I went over to Mexico. It started in my upbringing. It started in the fact that my parents migrated from Samoa during turbulent time of the Dawn Raids. They settled here in New Zealand, and so now I have this really rich upbringing of being a first generation New Zealand-born Samoan Tokelauan woman, which has its challenges, but also its huge opportunities, and the richness that comes with that empowers me every day. So that's a little bit about me, and I look forward to sharing more of my story, but I look more forward to hearing from the rest of our panelists and all the kōrero insights they have to bring today. So thanks, Angela.
Thank you, Lupicina. I just want to tautoko what you've said about how grateful I am to be here and to be given the opportunity to sit alongside some amazing people here with me. My name is Kate. Sorry, tipu ana o ki tai awhiti, ko titirangi te maunga, ko Waipawa te awa, ko Papanui te waka, ko Falun me Anderson toku iwi whānau, ko tangata te ho, ko Kate toku ingoa. It's lovely to see you all here today. My name is Kate. I was born and raised in Tairāwhiti, Gisborne, on the east coast of the North Island, but I moved up here to Tamaki Makaurau to pursue my undergraduate degrees, which I'm now in my final semester of. I'm almost there, so close. So I'm studying a Bachelor of Global Studies and a Bachelor of Arts. And I was invited here today through my mahi with Education New Zealand. I was very privileged to be given an internship with them last summer, and I've continued to do contract work, particularly in the Global Citizens team, where I was helping to facilitate the Prime Minister's scholarships Lupicina was on, to Latin America and to Asia. I also am a volunteer with UN Youth. I've been volunteering with them for quite a long time, and UN Youth is a youth for youth charitable organisation that provides civics education for students. So as I think I told you guys when I met you, I feel like global citizenship kind of permeates every part of my life. But yeah, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Kia ora i te whānau, ko wainui tuku maunga, ko wainui tuku awa no Paikakiriki aho, ko Peter Hanford tōku papa, ko Bridget Pidford tōku mama, ko Sophie Hanford tōku ingoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everyone, and tautoko exactly what Lupe and Kate have said around the privilege that it is to be in the room with all of you and to have been a part of the conversations over the last couple of days that have left me feeling incredibly inspired, hopeful, energised and ready for action. I'm ready to figure out how we can translate the conversation inside of these four walls out into our communities and to really germinate and catalyse some exciting things for both current generations and also future generations. So how I kind of fit into this picture, I guess. My name's Sophie. I am from the beautiful seaside community of Paikakiriki. So 1,700 of us, very kind of communal, whānau-like place where we have, I'd say anyway, we have a pretty shared set of values, which is something from a young age I've kind of always really treasured. Growing up, planting trees, cleaning up the beaches, knowing and understanding that we have an inherent obligation to the whenua on which we stand, but also the whenua that is not actually ours, that is something that's collective and also something that was ultimately taken. And so understanding that is part of the story, that almost inherently just by perpetuating these systems, by operating within them, that we need to be cognizant of, and that's something that I think, I'm on a journey to understanding and to playing my role in kind of deconstructing. So I do that through sitting around my local council table. I was elected to local government at the age of 18, and off the back of coordinating the nationwide school strike for climate alongside an awesome crew of young people, the youngest of which is 8 years old. And so I gained courage and hope from them and the ways in which they speak and stand every single day. They know what they stand for, and therefore they know what they won't fall for and what they'll continue to be strong in the face of. And we know that when there are such pressing challenges, we can't afford to kind of sit back. And so, it's a pretty intense space to be in sometimes when the next youngest elected member is over 50 years of age and I'm 22. So the difference in lived experience and worldview is quite stark sometimes, and I find myself needing to put what sometimes feels to them like quite confronting views on the table. But I think that all links back to global citizenship, because the importance of us kind of speaking truth, understanding what truth means to each of us as individuals is important to see eye to eye. And I think through doing that, we can become better global citizens. I've studied in Thailand as well for a couple of months and have been involved with the Ship for World Youth program, which brought together 240 young people from across the world to spend time together on a boat and learn about each other's stories, cultures and narratives. And all of those things I think are just phenomenal opportunities that I hope many of you in this room feel like you can access or feel empowered to access. So that's me.
Wow. Wow, following that great kōrero from Sophie Hanford. Following Sophie Hanford on anything is always a challenge. But I'm honoured to be on this panel today with these absolute mana wahine. But kia ora, ko Kaden toku ingoa. I myself am not a wahine. I am non-binary. My pronouns are they, them. So hopefully bringing a slightly different gender perspective into this kōrero as well. I think global citizenship is hard to define. I know a lot of the discussions that we've had over the past few days have been about exactly how broad it is and exactly how much of a challenge it can be to narrow it down, especially when we live or are privileged enough to live in Aotearoa. It can feel quite isolating sometimes. Some of us might feel geographically isolated. I know that's been a frequent theme throughout many of the discussions that I heard today and many of the talks I heard today. So for me, I try to bring back global citizenship to actually the kaupapa that brought me onto the panel today, and that is the Make It 16 campaign. Aotearoa has our own huge challenges, and that in itself can be overwhelming, let alone the challenges the rest of the world is facing. So I became involved in the Make It 16 campaign, which is the campaign to lower the voting age to 16, because I see voting as a really powerful tool, and I see mobilising young people to turn up and engage in our democracy as a really powerful mechanism to engage with all the other issues like climate change and mental health and inequality that young people are concerned about. And I think this campaign connects really well with global citizenship because what we're doing in Aotearoa with the Make It 16 campaign is not happening in isolation. Thinking local, acting global. I think that might be a Vic slogan. So we might be promoting all the universities today. I completely lost my train of thought there. But I guess the point is to say what we're doing in Aotearoa is not happening in isolation. And I found that with Make It 16. I found that while we're doing our own court challenges and while we're lobbying politicians and setting up petitions and organising youth debates here, there are rangatahi across the world doing the same things. There's an ongoing legal challenge in Canada. They've set up Make It 16 campaigns in the Netherlands. They've set up Make It 16 campaigns in Australia. They're doing it in California. They're doing it in Latin America. Brazil's had a voting age of 16 since the 1980s. And School Strike for Climate is another really great example of tailoring an international movement to the challenges we're facing in an Aotearoa context. And to me, that's global citizenship. To me, it's looking about what we can achieve together, but also looking at the challenges we face on a local level. So yeah, I hope to bring that mindset to the korero today.
Wow, isn't that awesome? That's so great. And I think we've talked a bit about this involvement in public life, and especially on this theme for today being responsibility, and so we'll definitely come back to that. But I just wanted to talk to Sophie. So, in the last workshop before lunch, Sophie and Cody co-led an awesome workshop on youth, and I just want to hear a bit about what you came up with. And I know you've talked about a definition of global citizenship education that is meaningful to you. So, yeah, I'm really keen to hear a bit about what went on in that workshop.
Yeah, first of all, shout out to all the rangatahi in the room. If you're a young person or you're at the workshop, can you just, go, woo, like, Awesome. Yeah, we really brought the energy and the fire. We were dancing to K-pop, we were sharing languages, we were learning Chinese, we were learning Mandarin, we were having kōrero and te reo Māori, we were learning new words, we were just, I feel like, embodying what global citizenship is. And the most beautiful thing about it was we were being open and honest about both the challenges that we feel like we face in interpreting some of the things that are spoken about in spaces like these, where we're hearing from people who I feel like it can be easy to see as kind of put on a pedestal, or they're using these big words, they're talking about these big concepts, they're talking about real systemic things that can feel and sound quite overwhelming. And so what we really focused on was kind of unpacking some of the things that really landed for us over the last couple of days, and the things that we just went, yes, that connects, I get it, I feel that, I know it in my bones to be true, I know it to be something that will propel me forward. And then the things that, frankly, we didn't really get, or the things that challenged us, the things that we kind of weren't so sure of. And where we got to was that actually collectively, we couldn't really articulate what global citizenship meant individually. But what we found was that as soon as we started putting words on paper, collectively we formed a definition of what global citizenship meant to us that we could all identify with, connect with and understand. So where we got to was kia whakamana ngā, wait, sorry, 1 second, bear with me. Kia whakapapa I ngā one more time, Sophie. Kia whakamana I ngā haipapa kia hono ngā tau iwi. So to uplift the roles and responsibilities to make connections with other countries. And so very much focused on uplifting those roles and responsibilities, stepping into them, and the piece around connection. Because we just kind of felt like, we can keep talking about, these big words, we can keep referring to jargon, but what does it mean? What does it look like? How do we make it active? How do we make it, meaningful in the present moment? So that's where we got to. And I just want to shout out to all the young people who were in that space for being so open and honest about how this conversation was sitting with you, because I then felt like it's got us to a place where collectively we can then stand in that definition, knowing what we want to try and create together. So it was really awesome. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds really great. Is there anything that you guys wanted to add to that from that discussion, or?
I really like, I guess, that conversation about how to make global citizenship meaningful for young people and how to make global citizenship meaningful for everyone. Because I think it's so true that some people can be put on a pedestal. And I mean, to my shock, I don't know how I started getting invited to these panels, but I've recently become a young person who's quite frequently put on a pedestal. And I honestly haven't done anything except show up and volunteer and work towards, I guess, a broader goal. And so I do just want to emphasize that getting involved in these spaces can be for everyone. You know, I can't say this for much longer, but I'm currently literally just a 17-year-old. I work in retail. I'm a first-year university student, which is fairly ordinary in the scheme of things. And I'm probably very similar and probably very close in the age range of a lot of the young people who are there today or are sitting in the audience who absolutely should be on panels and speaking to these issues as much as we deserve to be on the stage right now. And I think that would be a really cool theme to bring into this Kōrero conference as well.
And we did talk about this sort of concept of getting, you know, people being engaged in either public life or just in issues that are important to them. And sometimes it's quite challenging when some of the issues aren't as visible, or as you've sort of said, Kate, and you, there can be a sort of feeling of like, well, who am I? What have I got to offer? You know, I'm not someone who's up on a panel. And yeah, I'd just be really keen to hear from maybe starting down this end of the couch, if you've got anything to say around you know, this sort of responsibility or capacity, I guess, to sort of get involved and take that step, and how you might frame that yourself.
Yeah, totally. Sound partai. I think we take it back a step and we understand there's that saying that with privilege comes a responsibility to serve your community or to serve those around you, right? So I think before we talk about responsibility, it's first important to acknowledge that, and I'm sure we're all aware and you're all aware that we all sit at different levels of thinking that we might be able to do something. So as much as we tell you, you can do this, until you innately believe that, which has a whole lot of other complex factors to convert your mindset from someone who thinks, oh, I'll just do what my parents did before me, or just continue with doing what I've seen out there. You know, I totally recognise that not everyone had the chance to be exposed to different worlds, to be exposed to different kaupapa, to understand that you can have an impact in the work that you do. So in terms of responsibility, recognising like where you stand and what your position is in relation to others, but also the responsibility to research and educate yourself around the issues that exist, and what that research looks like can vary from person to person. The pearls of wisdom that you pick up from the different people that you interact with, all of that counts as research. Attending this conference counts as research. And it comes like, you know, there's the Polynesian Panther saying of educate to liberate. It truly is that. We can't start to address something that we don't fully understand. And the reason that we start to get fearful or anxious about things is because we can't make sense of it in our own minds. And so just having exposure to kaupapa like this, or at school or at home, really helps to empower our young people to say, yes, I have that responsibility, and then to act, you know? But I want to stress that global citizenship education is not something that can only be enforced and driven in kura, in school. It starts at home, you know? It starts with your worldview that you start with, like starting young and going through life in the different schools, the different people you interact with. All of these things help to frame your mindset and frame your worldview for the responsibility that you now take upon yourself to act in these global issues, but first understanding what the context is in your own backyard.
Kia ora. Thank you, Lucinda. I really want to kind of come at that from a different angle as well, completely acknowledging that, but also I think that our educators and our kura and our things like this have a responsibility, going back to our definition, to really uplift rangatahi, because we see from things like the Make It 16 campaign, from school strikes, I see it in every kid that attends UN youth conferences and is really, really vocal about these issues that they see or they understand, even if they are completely abstract. You see how passionate they are about it, or even if they don't completely understand it, they have a feeling and they have an opinion. And so I think that the biggest thing that is required is providing space for them and listening to them and listening to rangatahi. Because, we've seen how hard it is to have our voices heard and pushing against, for something that we want to happen. I think that's the real responsibility that organisations and kura have. That's all.
Kia ora.
Anything you guys would like to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I just think it's exactly what Kay was saying around the responsibility that we have to keep creating space and passing the mic and not always being the one, even if we think we know what needs to be said or what could be said to plug a gap or what might be kind of the one silver bullet or the solution. Like, who are we designing these solutions for? And we often talk about the fact that maybe the system's broken. Maybe it's not, maybe it's functioning exactly how it's meant to, but for the people that it's meant to serve. And so how do we decouple those things? How do we figure out how we can create space for young people to design their own learning outcomes, create their own space within which they learn, and help to really drive their own vision for their education and for the future of the planet that they want to inherit? And I think it's so beautiful that we both hold the power to bring so much life and love into the world, but we also then, on the other hand of that, hold all of the power to destroy this one collective home, to destroy, to make an absolute mess of outcomes for young people and for future generations. And so the fact that we kind of have this dichotomy, I mean, which one do we choose? It seems pretty obvious to me, but why do we kind of still not have this longer term vision of where we want Aotearoa New Zealand to be and to go? And just to ensure that the steps that we're taking are towards that goal, because it can kind of feel like there's maybe some things happening in the whare, some things happening in kura, some things happening in the workplace. How do we make sure that all of that is connected, is lined up, is integrated, and is singing off the same song sheet, so to speak, so that, as Bridget showed, you can have an orchestra that, you know, doesn't necessarily need a conductor because we're all working towards collective goals and aspirations for the next generation. And so that's what I'm really keen to figure out, is how we don't silo the conversation, but how we get everyone kind of across the different sectors and facets of society having this conversation, young and old, and just across the geography of New Zealand, and making sure that we're giving voice to those who aren't often the loudest or the most articulate or articulate in a different way. The creatives, that whole piece. I'm just keen to see us be a bit more integrated.
Yeah. Actually, that kind of made me think about something. I was really enjoying, I guess, the kōrero around the role of kura and schools in global citizenship. And I think there's a role for schools to expose rangatahi to opportunities or to other perspectives they might not have otherwise. But for me, a huge part of my, I guess, global citizenship journey, for lack of a better term, or at least understanding I've gained, has been digital. It's been online, it's been through social media. And I've been thinking about how we connect people across different facets of society, how we connect people who might have language barriers or articulate differently or have different paths, whether that's being creators, whether that's because you're a teacher, student, whatever. Social media has broken down a lot of those silos, and it's given us an opportunity to follow and engage with people who we might not have spoken to otherwise. I got involved in the Make It 16 campaign actually because I saw someone post about it on Instagram, and I feel like that's probably true for a lot of young people and how we get involved in things.
Sorry, but that just brings us back nicely to your point in the beginning of our kōrero when you talked about the challenges we face in New Zealand being geographically isolated. The digital platform and the digital world makes it so that's no longer really a barrier, right? But we can, like you were alluding to, Sophie, you can use social media as a great tool or a great weapon. And so depending on what content is out there and what we choose to spread or you know, our generation, it can really force decision making, to be really good or really harmful.
That's so true. And actually, I will acknowledge that something in my mindset that has shifted recently is connection comes with social media, but also connection with our Pacific neighbours and Australian neighbours has come so naturally for us in Make It 16 and what I've experienced with global citizenship, because the idea of Aotearoa being geographically isolated, my understanding is that's quite a Western perspective, because actually the ocean is what connects us to other countries and other people, basically. So on one hand, we have the ocean connecting us to our Pacific neighbours and opportunities for partnership there. And then on the other, as you were saying, we have digital opportunities for connection.
And it's something that Kane mentioned on the very first night in her opening speech about, she was in a small town on the East Coast, and this kind of thing of distance and isolation was kind of more of a mindset. Actually, for most people, it's a flight to get somewhere else in the world, and actually we probably don't need to hide behind that any longer. Actually, we can be incredibly connected digitally, and most countries just a plane ride away. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. I see we've got just 1 minute to go. We have actually got extra time after that for questions, which will be on Slido. If you look inside your name tag, there's a QR code that you can scan to join the Slido thing, and please pop questions in, because we'll go and answer them once I go and pick up my phone, which I left over there. But is there anything else? Well, we will have more time for kōrero with the questions, but just that you wanted to kind of share that you either from this conversation or another perspective before we go into the questions.
I'm quite keen. Something that I really enjoyed talking to one of the workshop facilitators yesterday was talking about how we approach global issues and how we talk about global issues, and we tend to take quite a kind of like doomsday or like apocalyptic approach, which is absolutely necessary in so many circumstances. But also I think for young people, sometimes that becomes quite paralyzing when we feel like it's such a massive issue and it's happening right now and the world is ending, and you feel like you can't do anything, and that, oh, I might as well just not try because it's too big for me to even tackle. And so I think that something that is really important for us and for everyone to do in order to engage our rangatahi and to really help them feel empowered, kind of going back to the uplifting thing, is showing or encouraging them to see how much they can do and how much they can provide and how much change there is like to be made, but in a positive light, not so much in a, oh my gosh, we have so far to go, but look at how far we have to go, look at how much you can contribute.
Can I ask the first question? Would that be possible? I kind of brought it into the kōrero, so I'd be really interested for your perspective on this, Lupusina. Talking about when we're thinking about how Aotearoa engages with other countries, especially our Pacific neighbours, as someone who's experienced the colonial harm, I suppose, that Aotearoa has done, New Zealand has done really with the Dawn raids, and actually the harm we've caused our Pacific neighbours. Do you have a perspective on that?
Sorry, on what specifically?
On how we
relate
engage with our Pacific neighbours without causing harm.
What a question, Kaden. I could have asked me this at lunch. No. Okay. I will say,
just fully acknowledging in the context of global citizenship as someone who is Pākehā in a Western country.
No, totally understand and totally fair question. I think I had this story from uni, which I think talks quite well to this question. And we had an assignment, we were given an assignment, and this was the year of COVID, so 2020. We were given this assignment to research the impact of COVID and how other countries around the world were dealing with the COVID pandemic. We're split into groups and we had to do a full assessment. What were the costings like, the economic case, sort of management case, all of that amazing, awesome stuff. And the assignment had been briefed so that you were given a list of countries that were mandatory to research, and then within your groups, you could choose any countries on your own to research. And so all the countries that were given to research were countries in Europe or Asia. There was the US, the UK, I think it was Japan, China. So, really like heavy hitters, I guess, on the international landscape. But none of the countries there were any Pacific countries who, at the time, no one had reported any cases of COVID. So I thought, that's so interesting. We've been given this cohort-wide assignment to research the impact of COVID. The Pacific has no cases. This is a year into the pandemic, and they haven't been put on the list of mandatory countries to research. So I brought it up in a forum that we have called Plaza at the university. Piazza. And you sort of ask questions, and I made my note, and I signed off my name. I said, my name is blah, blah. I just thought it's interesting that we didn't include the islands as one of the countries to research, given their situation. And I just got a flurry of messages from my cohort. So it's probably a cohort of about 900 students. And it was just like, oh, you're just being nationalists. Why would we even care about the islands, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, wow, you people are you're about to graduate with an engineering degree from this university, designing solutions for a community that you inherently do not understand. And so my first answer was, man, I'm scared. I don't know how, So I'm a year and a half now into full-time working, and I think there is definitely a ways to go in how we manage, Aotearoa manages the relationship with the Pacific neighbours and in understanding global citizenship. But from the Pacifica perspective, it's nothing new. Global citizenship is nothing new. By nature of our migration story, by how we've settled our families all over the world, and so far as Peru, the States, everywhere you'll find, Pacifica people, it's quite amazing the resilience that's on display. And it's more like an exciting opportunity for those who exist in the diaspora to understand what their local context is, to give back to the islands in whatever capacity that looks like. So, yeah.
Amazing. That was a big question and an incredible answer. Thank you very much for sharing that insight. One of the questions that's come through here, I know we've got a lot of people here who are involved in the education sector in one way or another, but just reflecting on your experience of global citizenship education in school or in uni, and I know we talked about this beforehand, that there's a lot of other influences on your life around this, but if you could just, reflect a bit on your school experience through this. It's a little bit closer for you guys perhaps than us.
I'm going to go first.
Oh. Wait, so would you mind just repeating the question?
Yes, your really experience with global citizenship education at school, did that help shape your choices, who you are? Were you aware of it at school? Was it in the curriculum?
To be completely honest, there's kind of two aspects to this question. One is that I had Libby Giles helping design part of my curriculum, so I did have a really positive experience. But the other part of it is I honestly hated high school. I was honestly miserable in high school. And so part of how I became really strongly involved in global citizenship is because I felt so alone and miserable in high school that I was looking for ways to experience connection and to feel involved and make a difference outside of my limited high school community and the limited perspectives that came with that. So in a roundabout way, yes, high school influenced my global citizenship engagement, but it was because I wanted to experience the world outside of high school and because I wanted to connect with people outside of high school.
This theme of connections and community has been so strong throughout this forum, and I just think that's so important. And I think this is what this is about too, is creating this community, this tribe of people who are really passionate about this, who can together go out and do great things. Sort of following on from that, and Katie, you don't have to answer this. Some of you might have had similar experiences, but this question is about how can we be careful about developing anxieties and fears related to global issues for young people. It can be incredibly overwhelming, and I'd be very interested in anyone's thoughts on this, because I think for people outside of school as well, it's incredibly overwhelming. So perhaps we'll come down to, Kate or Sophie, haven't heard from you in a while, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, we've got to create space for young people to feel that fear. I don't think we want to completely suppress it and say, it's not good to be sad, it's not good to feel fearful, it's not good to feel hopeless or helpless, because sometimes that's just how you feel. And actually I kind of find this, especially in kind of the workplaces, we're not that good at being emotional or letting our emotions or kind of our value sets shine through in terms of the ways in which that we emotionally interact with issues. And I think it's worth acknowledging that it's very normal to feel actually quite overwhelmed at the scale of the crisis, and that actually that then means, and especially because we're the ones who are causing and who have caused so much of this hurt both to the planet and fellow people, is that we are the ones who have everything in our own hands to turn the ship around and to change things. And I think it is really around allowing people and creating space for people to feel that and to know that it's a shared hurt, that it's not something that they have to burden themselves with entirely, that it's something that collectively we feel, and we just need to get better at being honest, I think, about those things. And also then something that we can kind of re-navigate the conversation to being around, okay, so we feel this way. Like, let's process that. What does that mean? Where does that stem from? And actually what I've started to kind of recognise and unpack is that the feeling of, specifically when we look at the climate crisis, the feeling of being overwhelmed is actually exactly how the fossil fuel companies, the people who are continuing to emit, continuing to exploit the planet at the expense, continuing to make profit at the expense of the planet and the exploitation of the planet, that's exactly how they want us to feel. They want us to feel small, they want us to feel guilty, they want us to feel helpless and hopeless and like everything's doomed, because then it just serves them and they can keep doing what they're doing, knowing that the social license won't be ripped out of under their feet, because we'll just be sitting there kind of waiting for someone else to lead, or just feeling kind of like we can't do anything, like we're paralysed by the sense of fear. So I actually think one of the best things that we can do to resist that is by allowing ourselves to rest, to feel, to connect with the issue and how it's making us feel, and then to come together and work towards solutions, and knowing too that we have the power to reimagine our systems, because they're, the systems that we have are just simply people. They're created by people, people exist within them, we're the ones who continue to make them happen and keep them moving. So yeah, I don't think we want to necessarily like completely suppress that fear. I think it's worth feeling, but then we also have to recognise the opportunity inherent in that. And what I always say to climate change deniers who kind of make you feel like, oh, is this fear kind of something that's even warranted, is, well, what if we took all of this action to make our world more sustainable, equitable, green, circular? We would have just created a more beautiful world for the next generation. Like, don't you want to be a part of that? Yeah. Anyway, regardless of whether our planet's burning, regardless of whether, ice caps are melting and people's lives are literally at stake right now, we've got to focus on that, and we've also got to think about the awesome opportunities inherent in climate action. Yeah.
Gosh, that was great, and quite counter actually to some of the sort of narrative I hear out there. So that was just really insightful. Really appreciated that. Anything else anyone wanted to add?
I just wanted to add Sophie's quote. Creating space is really, really important, but don't create it if you don't know how to hold it. Particularly for young people. If you want to have that conversation, make sure that you are equipped yourself to facilitate it. If you will not, find someone who is. Sophie sounds like a great facilitator. I don't want to tag her on behalf. Creating space is so important, but you need to make sure that they're authentic and that it's a space that's truly listening to that voice that you're trying to amplify, rather than do the LinkedIn post or do the little add-ons, that kind of frill it up and thrill it up. So just my only value add, because what you said was so powerful, Sophie, is do not create space that you don't know how to hold. Especially for our young people, because then you build that mistrust and you build that sense, you almost add to the anxiety without being able to hold them appropriately in that space.
That's actually just made me think of a really good point as well. This is actually something Chloe Swarbrick was talking about at the youth debate last night, which was we need to support our young people to be able to have their say and speak truth to power, but at the same time, if we're bringing young people into spaces to speak on panels, to give governance advice, etc., we can't be burning them out. We should be paying rangatahi who step up into these spaces. We should be supporting them, because actually, even though climate anxiety is really bad, a lot of negative mental health outcomes can happen when we put a lot of pressure on young people to be the only solution.
Yeah, very good. Do you want to add anything, Katie?
I would just like to talk what Caden talked about. I think there's so many familiar faces of rangatahi or young people who are leaders, and just thinking about how much burden that is on a singular person to represent their entire community or represent the entire youth population of Aotearoa. Just talking providing support and providing spaces for community and spaces for
spaces for diverse voices of young people, right? So there's not just one person who has to represent every queer young person, or one person has to represent every Samoan young person. So we actually have a broad range of voices in every conversation.
For sure.
And being really mindful of that when we're inviting people into various things to ensure that we're having that diverse perspective. Another really interesting, a great question I think for you guys is, as rangatahi, where do you find the mana and kaha to speak up on your respected kaupapa? What is your drive? What drives you? I might start with Kate this time.
Okay. I feel that when I met all of you and I was thinking about this panel, I feel like I'm still very much at the beginning of my kind of journey of moving from being someone absorbing all of this information. I feel like I'm someone who very much sits back and I kind of absorb information and I absorb the situation before I then move into action. And I feel like I'm still kind of on the precipice of moving from understanding and learning and getting as much education as I can, and then deciding where to put my energy and where to put my time. So I think that for me, I don't know if I necessarily have a specific thing that drives me. I think it's just a general like wanting to see a better world and wanting to see things better for everyone, and you know, seeing people that I love and that I care about, seeing people within my community who are needing support or needing more help or needing things to be better for them so that they can succeed as much as I've been privileged enough to be able to succeed and to be able to be in places like this. I think, yeah, it just comes from, I think, from being as aware as I can of the world around me and just wanting to see it better and better, because we can always do better, we can always do more.
Anyone else want to provide a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think for me it's an awareness of how crucial this moment in time is, that we have the utmost opportunity, and that comes with it responsibility to act within what is the defining decade of climate action, and it has to be. And the fact that those of us in time and the broad scale of history happen to be alive at this specific point where if we do or don't take action, we either stop or don't stop climate breakdown, runaway climate change, which will continue for generations to come, that is something that has been bestowed upon us. What are we going to do with that? That's a torch that has been passed and passed and passed and passed, and it kind of feels like the buck stops with those of us alive right now. And that is huge, because as Caden talked about, it's our oceans that unite us, they don't divide us, and climate change is a borderless issue. It's both one that has real justice elements to it, because those who have contributed so little are the ones who are seeing the effects of climate change on their front doorsteps. They're the ones who are having to stand up in the face of what has surmounted and rising sea levels and say that we're not drowning, we're fighting. But the fact that they even have to think and consider the fact that their homelands, their cultures, their way of life, their whānau's land might be at risk because of another country's pollution and failure to acknowledge their role in the global system in whānau is frankly scary. But the fact that we have the opportunity right now as people alive in this moment to take that seriously and to say we're not going to stand for people disrespecting that anymore. And instead we're going to stand up in respect of our collective home, with love for our collective home, with love for what this place could be, and do everything that we possibly can to make that happen. So that's what drives me, because this moment in time is simply crucial, and I don't want my grandchildren in the future to be like, whoa, Sophie, you were alive in the defining moment of climate action. What did you do?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be able to say that I did nothing, because they will inherit our action or our inaction. We cannot let them inherit our inaction. We cannot let business as usual just continue. We cannot be complacent with, quite frankly, systems that are not functioning for who and what they need to be. And that's upon all of us to use the positions that we have, the levers that we have to change that. And if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? We can't just keep talking. Yeah, so that's what motivates me. Yeah.
I think this thing of long-term thinking, just this long-term outlook is so important, and it's something that I think we sort of lost over the sort of recent little while. But yeah, that's a really good point to think about. Yeah, Caden, how about you?
Oh, I don't, basically just everything what Sophie has said so far has really resonated with me, especially about why we do this and why we do this, mahi. I think to add on what Sophie has said, a lot of people always wonder, what would I have done at any other historical point? What would I have done in Nazi Germany? What would I have done when women were fighting to get the vote? And the answer is always exactly what you're doing right now. So if you're someone who's standing up right now, you probably would have stood up in the past. But if you're someone who's sitting and just letting things happen, or saying it's too hard, or saying it's not your problem, or saying you don't understand enough to get involved, that's probably what you would have done in the past as well. So I find that really motivating, similar to what Sophie has said around what would my grandchildren think? What will my grandchildren think if I do nothing? It's also, what will my ancestors think if I do nothing right now? Or what will the activists who came before me think if I don't make the most of the fact that we need to keep continuing this fight? And that applies to climate action, but that applies to human rights. That applies to so many different areas where people have, I guess, brought I can't think of an appropriate metaphor, but brought us forward, and how we're going to keep continuing to bring us further forward.
We're basically out of time, but I think that might be a really good place to finish on, as we have this day where we talked about stepping up to the world and our responsibility. The kaitiakitanga is, I've just forgotten what you said, is when you look back in history and you think, you know, who would I have wanted to be in those pivotal moments? You know, think about that, and who are you right now, and you don't have to have all the answers, you don't have to know everything, you just have to have that belief.
Do something.
Just do something.
Start somewhere, yeah.
Start something, yeah. Anything else you wanted to add or say before we finally wrap up? Was anything burning thought that you really wanted to get across?
Yeah, just to answer the previous question about my why, I guess it's anytime I get nervous about something, I think, oh, it's all right, it's not about me.
Yeah.
I'm doing this, but it's not about me. You know, you stand here with, like, you know, you mentioned your future and your ancestors. We don't sit here alone. You know, we sit with a whole generation backing us, a whole generation ahead rooting us on, and so that's what empowers me to sit here. And then the old age, if not you, then who? If not now, then when?
Yeah,
That's it. That's our call to action.
That's such a good call to action as well, and I feel like that's such a reoccurring theme with global citizenship, and with what makes you so inspiring is not thinking about yourselves and just thinking about the causes and just thinking about the bigger picture. And I guess that's a why in of itself, because on days where you're feeling like you're not up for it, where you don't have to think about yourself, you just have to think about how you fit in the bigger picture.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely amazing discussion, and thank you for being the people that have stood up and have done something. But I know it's cut into free time that you might have had otherwise, or you know, other things you might have been doing. But this has just been a really awesome discussion. I'm glad it's been recorded. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Let's put our hands.